Hey everyone, it's Daniel, and I'm recording this the day after Christmas. I don't have my typical Truth Ache co hosts with me today, but I do have my daughter, Kaija, in from NYU in New York City. And I thought that was the perfect opportunity to have a conversation across the generations about Gen Z and how Gen Z relates to those of us in older generations in the workforce, how they look at the world, how they understand politics, dating, relationships, public policy, all that kind of stuff. And so Kaija joined me for a conversation. I hope you enjoyed your holiday break, and I hope you enjoyed this little bit of what I did on mine. This is Truth Ache. From Indianapolis, Indiana, this is Truth Ache. So I have my daughter, Kaija, with us today. Kaija Herndon. And at the end of this episode, I'm certain that we're going to have a better understanding of Gen Z to the point where I may actually be able to start hiring people under 30 again. So that's going to be great, or could be, hopefully. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your work, what you're doing with your studies right now, and kind of the direction of your life so that we can kind of establish some context and just understand your credentials.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with my undergrad. I went to IU. I got degrees in political science and journalism. And then I worked in politics for a short while, decided to go to law school, went to law school also at IU. And I started working in tax law. So I got a dual master's in public affairs and my JD, and I focused on economics, finance, and tax policy. And then I worked for the federal government for a while. I was a federal tax litigator, so I did tax controversy. And then I left the federal government to go to NYU. So I currently live in New York, and I am studying to get my Tax LLM. So it's a master's degree after the JD.
The JD being basically
The law degree.
A law degree.
Yeah.
So it's a master's degree with essentially in a specific focus area, practice area of law, right?
Yes. So you can't go to the LLM, at least my LLM, without having a JD, so a law degree prior, and it's specifically focused on tax. So I'm taking courses in partnership, corporate, it's like specific areas of tax.
Yours is focused on tax,
yeah.
But there are other LLMs in other categories.
There are other LLMs in other categories, but they're not. If you have a law degree, you generally don't need an LLM.
Okay, and since you're my daughter, I should know this, but how old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Probably blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. You still have favorite colors. That means you're not quite 27.
Well, okay. You asked me what my favorite color was. That was my favorite color.
Okay. It was a trap. That's fine.
Oh, wow. Just warn me next time.
Okay. Yeah, I will warn you about anytime I'm trying to trap you.
Traps.
So, and you would, do you ever associate, like, do you ever, I guess, do you find that you associate with Gen Z as a generation, or is everybody else your age just another group that you don't feel like you belong in? How do you kind of map yourself on the world?
I don't really identify with generations, but I don't really think of you as what are you, millennial?
Older than that.
Okay.
Gen X.
Gen X, okay.
Yeah, I'm the last Gen Xer, or the very first millennial. It was probably within 2 to 3 weeks before the first millennial came around. I think I'm tail end of the Generation X.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really identify people with like their specific generations. For myself, I guess that I'm Gen Z, but I'm not like the chronically online brain rot type Gen Z, which
I think we're going to get along.
But I also think that that's like a stereotype about like high schoolers and whatever. But even when you were in high school, I'm sure you were doing stupid stuff. So I don't really want to judge an entire generation for that.
You'd rather just judge individuals.
I'd rather judge individuals. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what you taught me. So
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't want anything more than for you to be a judgy person.
that's what everyone says about their children. Like, I
Exactly.
really want you to be really judgmental.
Yeah. My parents said I want him to be a complete jackass, and they sure are proud. Okay, so let's talk about the whole notion of identifying people in generation. So a lot of times you see that people are taking um, taking a look at the world and saying these people are in a generation called something and they are like this, right?
Yeah.
That um, to the degree that you pay any attention to social psychology and studying the society, how do you think that's total bunk, or is that a reasonable way to sort of observe the world?
I think it's a sweeping generalization. I don't know if I would say it's total bunk, because there are certain things that I had in my childhood that are different from what you had in your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the internet was around. There were easily accessible, like, cell
Yeah.
phones, and that makes my experience different than yours. And I'm certain that that has impacted the way that we act in my generation and the way that you all acted in yours.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would take it beyond that.
So,
So,
well, when I was a kid, there was internet, but it was hard to come by.
mhm.
And
Weren't computers like the size of a room or something? Like, they were
no,
huge.
I'm not that old, but thank you. No, we had desktop computers that had a big tube monitor and a separate keyboard and a separate tower with all the guts of the computer in it, and we had chat rooms, right?
Mhm.
And so chat rooms were this place where you went and you were essentially, at least from my perspective, you were an anonymous person that could um, create friends, and usually it was just a bunch of lonely people talking to each other, and not there's no faces or anything like that. And that grew over time and very quickly to where everybody had um, instant messaging,
Mhm.
which was um, you had to be at your computer, at your desk, at your house to use instant messaging. And today, instant messaging is replaced by texting, and people are texting all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was different in that the the tools of the internet were far more limited, and it was only when you were at a place, right?
Mhm.
And now today, internet content, information, interacting with people is with you all the time.
Mhm.
And I think that shapes a generation in significant ways. What do you think about that?
I think that it would shape a generation in significant ways, but I think there's a focus on all of the negative aspects of that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And I think people have made sweeping generalizations about, I guess, my generation because of it, when it's really a lot more nuanced.
Yeah. So, and of course it's nuanced, but so I'm in marketing, and in marketing, one of the things that we do is we generalize people, right? So we look at a population, and then we divide them into segments, and we say, okay, you're a company that does business in the Midwest, and in the Midwest, the people that are going to take the most interest in your product or service are people that fit into these categories. And people that fit into these categories, maybe they're IT directors at a business, or maybe they're the a mom with children that play soccer, right? And so once we put people into these categories, we say people in these categories also like these other things. Now, I have my disagreements with that approach, but nonetheless, marketing is something where we do put people into buckets.
Mm-hmm.
What's your feeling about doing that.
No, I mean, that makes sense. You have to make these certain generalizations to sell a product or reach your audience. I don't think that it's a problem to put people into buckets for that purpose. I do think it is a problem to judge the individual based on what bucket they fall into.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So before we started the podcast, I had mentioned this whole idea of there was a time where I said, I don't want to hire another person under 30 until they can be outnumbered 2-1 by someone over 35. And the reasons for that were vast, but there are some that are very important. And so instead of trying to continue to continue to operate that way, I just wanted to invite you to have a conversation about what are some of the things that we should understand about Gen Z, because a lot of times it comes down to employers don't understand the needs or expectations of a certain group of people, and they treat them unfairly because of that. So I think that this is going to be an opportunity to talk about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe hopefully our listeners and myself can just have a little wider aperture, a wider perspective on what Gen Z means to the world today,
Mm-hmm.
and what the world means to Gen Z, right? So we are going to do some generalizing in this conversation. So we just have to accept that that is a useful way to kind of observe the world.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be a real struggle for me.
Well, and I understand, and I'm going to push you
Yeah, you can push me.
to let go of some nuances some of the time,
Yeah.
right? And then we can talk about some of them as well. Okay. So first of all, what do you think of Gen Z as a workforce? You're obviously entering into the workforce at this time. You've had a few jobs, but you're at a stage where you're not quite settled into your permanent career yet. How do you think of Gen Z as a workforce?
Yeah, well, I have to operate within kind of where I work. So Gen Z as a workforce, I think about lawyers that are my age, or I guess a little bit older than me. So they would be some of like the first people in this generation, so the first Gen Zs. And I generally think of them as very competent, driven, and bright workers, I guess. But that's also within that's the context that I'm operating in. So I've gone through a lot of school. I've done well at work. I've succeeded. And I don't know if I can say anything more about Gen Z as a workforce beyond that context.
Yeah, the pool that you're in.
Yeah.
So one of the things that a study that Deloitte did says that 77% of Gen Z workers prioritize work-life balance above other factors in their career. Do you see that happening in the law field? I would almost tend to guess no.
Well, lawyers, the idea of work-life balance is just a little different than work-life balance for others. Well, in especially larger law firms or I guess big four accounting firms or whatever it may be, the job of a lawyer is that you're going into something that's a little bit intense. So it's not always like clock in, clock out 40 hours a week, whatever. Like when I worked at the federal government, which is typically, very good work-life balance, there were still many times or often that I was logging onto my computer at night, making sure that like things were going smoothly and I didn't get any new court orders or something like that. or I just couldn't shut off my brain
Yeah.
and I couldn't stop working. So I had to do something at that moment. I think that's common among lawyers. I do think that there is a focus on work-life balance, though, even within that kind of workaholic type environment,
Yeah.
because a lot of lawyers like to work. We like to be busy. We like to do a lot, and we generally like our jobs. But there has been a push to have some sort of balance, so that we're all healthier. I would say that a lot of my colleagues are interested in that, because at some point you have to recognize that your life is not just your work. It's the friendships, the relationships, the experiences that you have outside of work. So you won't be happy, fulfilled, and whole if your only like sole focus is your job. Or at least that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How do people think about the idea of happiness? Is there any conversation about that happening for people in your age group?
I'd say that there's a lot of conversation about that happening. Like, the economy is not really working well for younger people. It's harder to buy a house. It's harder to succeed and feel financially stable. And the idea of happiness changes with that. So you know that you're not going to be able to, own a home. So what do you want? Because that's the, traditional American dream. Have a house, couple kids, cars, whatever. So there is a lot of conversation about what happiness looks like outside of that. And for me personally, I can say what my happiness looks like, but I think that also varies person to person.
Yeah. So I feel like when I was young, people talked about the idea of an American dream, and they talked about the idea of having a job, but the idea of happiness was not as prevalent of a topic as it is today. And so I feel like, and tell me if you saw this shift, I feel like when COVID took place, there was this shift, and you were just kind of at a stage in your schooling that you may not have experienced this related to work, although
I was working at the time.
You were
I was working full time. Yeah.
This whole notion of what do I want work to do for me it sort of like felt like a new conversation. Did you notice that taking place as a change, or was it so just normal to you because this was really the beginning of your career?
I don't know if I noticed that as a shift. I think that I have thought about that for years. Like, I know that for me personally, work brings me a lot of fulfillment because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And I love my job. So the idea of thinking about like, what does work do for me has kind of been a non-issue, because I've never been miserable in my job, and thus it already brings a lot of fulfillment to my life. And I don't know if I noticed that in my colleagues either. So I wasn't aware of that sort of shift. But
Okay.
I'm certain that if you saw it and if you've read articles about it, it probably occurred, and maybe I was just insulated from it.
Yeah. So when you're thinking of happiness, how would you define happiness, and how would you define the American dream?
I wouldn't define the American dream because I think it's a farce. Like, it doesn't exist, not anymore.
Okay, so let's dig into that. You said not anymore, like as if it used to exist. Do you feel like
I don't know whether or not it used
inaccessible?
to exist. I don't know whether or not it used to exist. I think that that's hard. That's a hard thing to consider, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it existed. That I think that's for someone who's a little bit older than me to say.
So then when you think about the American dream, what do you think about? What do you just think, oh, that's just poetry and it's meaningless information, or what do you think about?
Well, I think about how people use this idea of the American dream and this hyper focus on capitalism and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, whatever. Like, you can succeed if you show that you want it enough and you work hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's just incorrect.
Yeah.
So to the extent that it ever existed, I think that it was still just, it was poetry, because it's not true. There are a lot of ways that you can get ahead, and not all of them are based on your own merit and your own hard work. In fact, a lot of them are not. So
what does it take to get somewhere in life?
it takes a lot of networking. It takes a lot of, being charismatic, and I guess that takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Like, personally, I've worked at it. I do a lot of networking, and that sort of stuff, or those activities. But it's not based on your own, like, intellect or your actual, like, competence for any specific job. It's based on who you know, and if they know something at the right time.
And so would you think that if you were to talk about what the world should be like, would it be better if success was based on your own intellect and hard work?
I don't know. I think that there's a real value to being able to, I don't know, work with others, and I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I want to say yes. But truthfully, I don't know.
Yeah. So but so far you've talked about getting to a place of happiness and thriving, and we're kind of talking about the idea of economic thriving. In life. You've talked about things that are hard work, networking, putting in the time, making connections, being at the right place at the right time, which is luck, I would say, but it also involves seizing that opportunity with having the intellect to notice it and putting in the effort to, put the time into it.
And having the ability to actually make it there. A lot of people don't have that.
Talk about that more.
So one thing that I feel very privileged to have is time. Not everyone has that. So when I was in undergrad, I was working full time most of the way through, and it was difficult to go to all of these networking events and do all of that. But that's because I had to pay for school. I had to put myself through somehow. And right now and throughout law school, I felt very privileged that I had the ability to not work as much, so that I could focus my efforts on building that network to get me the places that I wanted to go. A lot of people do not have that access. So they might have to work full time. They may have already, like, they might have a partner and kids and people to support, that it is just not feasible to add that additional pressure and work into your life. So the way that you get ahead is by having the ability to recognize those opportunities when they arise, going to them, being charismatic, meeting the right people, but it's also having the, like, economic means to do that in the first place, to start that process. And a lot of people just don't have that.
Yeah. And so then we're looking at a world where there's some people that are going to thrive and some people that are not. Do you think of that in terms of fairness, or do you think of that as just the breaks? That's just how it works out.
I think the dichotomy between fairness and that's the breaks is it's hard.
Let me try rephrasing that question, because what I'm thinking about is your there is this idea that some people that you've talked about, some people, they don't have the opportunity, they don't have the means. For example, during my college age years, I didn't have the ability to go to college at all
Mm-hmm.
because it was just not, it was not possible
Mm-hmm.
for a number of reasons. And then also, if I did, I would be facing this idea of homelessness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So homelessness to get a degree that maybe would make me better off in the future.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of times what happens with people that, end up with less fortunate circumstances is that they're constantly choosing between a worse outcome for a better future or a bad outcome, or a worse outcome, right? And the worst outcome is the only way to get to a better future. Sometimes it's extremely difficult to take that route, and sometimes it is wholly undesirable to a point where it's just a hard choice to make because nobody wants to live on the streets.
Yeah.
Right. So, and so I'm just, I guess what I want to ask you is, knowing this, do we as individuals have a responsibility for that?
For being the one who has to choose between the bad and the worst outcome, or for helping support people whose only choices are?
Is there anything of responsibility that those of us who aren't in those tougher circumstances, should we take any responsibility on us?
I think so. I also disagree that it is our, I guess, you and me, like our individual responsibility to go find that person and fix that problem for that one person. Because even though sometimes, like, if we find that person in the wild and we want to support them, absolutely we should. But as individuals, that's not something that we can do. And we can make one person's life better, but we can't affect the entire country,
Right.
or the entire society. So I think it's our responsibility to advocate our government to help support those people who don't have the means to start.
Yeah.
And I think that we should have a very robust, welfare system that brings the entire tide up.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that that's our responsibility as a society and as a community, is to raise that tide. But individually, it's almost impossible.
Okay, so individuals don't have a responsibility to a person or a group of people, but the responsibility is to advocate for our government to take on these challenges.
Yes, generally, yeah.
Yeah.
I struggle to say that we lack responsibility, because I think that there's a lot of, in our society today, a lot of like finger pointing, like it's not my responsibility, it's theirs. It's not my responsibility, it's theirs.
Right.
So I don't want to remove the responsibility from us as individuals, because then people can just kind of throw their hands up and say, oh, well, it's not my problem.
Right.
But it's all of our problem. And I think more people should recognize the general like impact that poverty and these struggles have on our society, and take responsibility for that.
So in short, do you believe that poverty has a negative impact on everyone else? So the people that are not poor?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. So since you brought up politics, how does Gen Z engage in politics today? Like, do your colleagues care about politics? And I mean separate don't try not to limit yourself to just your attorney friends, because
Yeah.
they're more likely, I feel like, to be
Yeah.
engaged in politics. Um,
That's hard for me because most of my friends are attorneys. But some of them that are not, like one of my close friends is not an attorney. He does work on the Hill.
mhm,
So he's very involved in politics. I mean, he works for a congresswoman. So there's that. I Yeah, and I guess most of my other friends, I met them in undergrad, so we were all in political science together. We're intimately involved.
yeah,
So you're asking the wrong person. I think that we do engage in politics. A lot of times it's going to be voting, but I also, in the last redistricting battle in Indiana that was happening just like a month or two ago, I was texting my friends who still live here and saying like, hey, start calling your state senators, start
yeah,
calling your state representatives. And some people are working in the state house, some people are writing to the state house. We follow politics because it dictates our future, and there's not a lot of representation for Gen Z's in politics right now. So being aware of it and then having like an eye towards how we can, you know, enact change in the future, I think is something
yeah.
that we're paying
And
attention to.
and do you see that people are, if you can try to look at the horizon outside of your group, your friend
Mhm.
group, do you see that Gen Z is engaging enough in politics or not enough?
I think we're engaging in politics a lot more. So there's a big push, especially in the midterms, like coming after Trump was reelected, to get more Gen Z people involved in politics. So
Yeah.
in Arizona's 7th district, we had Deja Fox, who was running. She's 25 years old, I believe,
Hmm.
and she was running for that congressional district. And we have Kat Abigazale, who's in Illinois. So she's running for Congress as well. And uh, then we have, I don't know, people around the country that are getting more involved and are
Yeah.
becoming more politically interested because we're seeing a real threat
Hmm.
to the future that we've been promised.
Yeah. And quickly describe what is that future that you've been promised? And feel free to like generalize. You don't have to be too precise, but like what do you mean by the future we've been promised?
I mean, a stable government that um, is working for the people.
Okay.
Um, I I've had a lot of conversations about this. I don't necessarily think that that means that my party wins all the time,
Yeah.
but having um, people who are involved in politics that are thinking about what is best for my constituents, what is best for the country, what is stable,
Hmm.
and there are a lot of ways that that's been attacked, like the Fed chair, the attempted firing of that, and kind of shakeups there, and the liquidation of the federal
Yeah.
government, and all of these systems that really support us in our
So
communities.
there's this anxiety about the what used to be this institution that has these stable pillars inside of it, despite the change of elected officials, and that's being obliterated, is what how you're seeing this, right?
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
that.
And so in New York, we had, and of course, you live in Manhattan right now.
Mhm.
You voted
I
in this
sure did.
election,
Yeah,
and
Mayor
do you?
Mamdani.
Yeah. So when now Mamdani makes it into office, um, how do you feel about that?
I feel great about that.
And tell me how you think that that's going to play out. Like a lot of times people vote, they get win or lose, but when the candidate gets into office, all the promises just sort of like fade away and it's business as usual. What are you expecting from this particular election?
There's always an element of business as usual because as someone who's worked around state and federal government, I'm not under the impression that every campaign promise is going to be completely fulfilled to everyone's wildest dreams, because that's just not how our government is set up, and that's for a reason. Things are supposed to move slowly. That's why we have senators who have 6-year terms, and Congress people who have 2-year terms. It's this structure that's meant to slow down the political process and make it more stable. So there are a lot of barriers to enacting this wild change that is promised.
Yeah.
I am very optimistic about what he can do. Not only because he has Lena Khan on his transition team, and I'm a big fan of hers.
Lena Khan was the former, what was her title? She was the, do you remember what her
FTC
title was?
chair?
Yeah, FTC chair. That's right.
Yeah. So she's wonderful and really good at her job, and her whole thing is looking at the statutes that are on the books and using them when they haven't been used in so long.
Yeah.
So it's really just using the tools that are available that have just been kind of ignored.
Yeah.
And so I'm really optimistic about what he can do with what is on the books right now.
And let me ask a question about that whole idea of using the statutes that have been ignored. That's exactly what the Trump administration has done. Do you think that is? Can you say that you admire that strategy, or do you think it's not playing fair, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, the laws that are on the books, like using those is playing fair. You're playing within the law.
Yeah.
I think that there is a difference between using what is on the books in a legal manner and in an illegal manner. So,
So if it's on the books, what does that mean? If it's on the books, it is a law, right?
Correct.
So when you say in an illegal manner, you just mean, what do you mean by that?
There's a stretch in interpretation. So laws are made of words, obviously, and words have meaning, and they also can be, interpreted in certain ways.
Yeah. So you don't think Mamdani will do that?
Oh, I'm certain he will. Okay. Yeah, but Lena Khan, when she was harnessing like that sort of stuff, it was very much working within this legal framework that we were taught as attorneys. But when you look at the Trump administration, I kind of resent the comparison, because the the act that was used for, there's the Alien Enemies Act, and then the Tariff Act, both of which I think have gone to the Supreme Court at this point.
Yeah.
But the Tariff Act specifically, it wasn't being used in the manner that Congress intended. So the laws on the books that have just been forgotten and unused, I think that they are fair game, but you have to work within the congressional intention for that law.
Yeah, and I think on the Alien Enemies Act, I think that's an interesting one. I'm going to look up some information on that, because I want to get my facts right.
That's not my area of expertise.
That's
so
that's
I don't
fine.
know
That's
how
fine.
much I can help.
It's not mine either. It's a U.S. law allowing the president to detain or deport nationals of an enemy nation during declared war. And it grants sweeping powers to target foreign nationals based on nationality rather than individual actions, leading to historical uses like Japanese, German, and Italian internment during World War II. Yeah. So here's something that I want to pose is, some would say that the idea of the Alien Enemies Act, just using that one law, I know that there's several that you referenced to, but there's several others. That one law is what it is. It is the law, right? And to use it hypothetically, and let's not split hairs, to use it at all is to use it legally. Again, don't split hairs on this one. Just play along with this whole thought process, because I'm more interested in your thoughts on the idea
Okay.
rather than any specific scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it not that we just find the law itself distasteful?
I personally find the law distasteful because, I mean, I learned Korimatsu in my first year con law class. So that was the Japanese internment camps. It was a case I went to the Supreme Court. But I personally find that distasteful. Like, we shouldn't be, just rounding up people because of their nationality
Yeah.
and putting them in camps. That's unethical and immoral. But I don't think that all uses of that law are legal. And I think it's dangerous to think that that's true, because the Alien Enemies Act, you mentioned that it requires a declared war.
Mhm.
Congress hasn't declared war.
Right.
So it's being used illegally.
Yeah.
And it was illegal to use that for these detainments. So
Yeah.
not even if I find a law distasteful, I can acknowledge when it's being used for its intended purpose
Yeah.
and within the bounds that it was created.
Yeah.
But in this circumstance, it's not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
no.
that totally makes sense. And I don't disagree with anything you just said. Um, it, but I think that one of the things that I always think about is we have the things that we in society think are wrong or distasteful, things that we're uncomfortable with, don't like them, or believe that they are morally wrong. And that seems to be changing all the time.
Mhm.
It may be within a range,
Mhm.
but the edges of it seem to change, right? And then there are the actual laws that only change when we pass new laws. And so I would say that something like the Alien Enemies Act, not to dwell too much on that specific one, but as a perfect example, was a problem from the beginning.
Mhm.
But at the time that it was passed, it wasn't considered distasteful to think that way.
Mhm.
And maybe the reason, the inspiration for it, and I don't know what was happening in 1798 specifically related to that law, maybe it made a lot of sense back then, right?
Mhm.
But then today, when there is no declaration of war, not only is it hypothetically illegal if the declaration of war still remains in the hands of Congress, assuming they have any kind of power, um, maybe maybe it's used illegally, but maybe we never wanted that law. Our generation, yours and mine both, never wanted that law to begin with, right?
Mhm.
So we're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
So, all right, as a lawyer, how would you feel if it was being used fully legally? How would you feel about this scenario?
I would feel uncomfortable with the scenario
Yeah.
generally because I, again, believe it's unethical and immoral. Um, but yeah, I think I would just feel uncomfortable with it. I would be upset with it, and I would be advocating for its repeal.
Okay. Um, all right. So we've talked about Gen Z as a workforce, but we didn't really dig into that.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about this whole idea of um, wanting to reduce my hiring in that category.
Yeah.
And I saw the look on your face. For the listener, it was a nice, polite wince and smile.
It was a smirk.
And it's one that I've learned to interpret as, I think that there's a liability there because I'm a lawyer now. So tell me about what your reaction is to that whole idea.
I would be curious to know why you do not want to hire Gen Z
Mm-hmm.
specifically, because that means that you would not hire me or Corinne
Mm-hmm.
for her job.
Right. And
so that's, I mean,
especially assuming if you weren't a member, if you weren't my daughter.
yeah. Yeah. But I think it's just a general confusion. So who burned you? why do you dislike them so much, and why has it soured you on an entire generation?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of change happening. Like you and mom were struggling to figure out how to flip the camera on FaceTime. What was that, yesterday morning? And Gen Z are generally more technologically savvy. And bringing in that talent that has these skills developed over, their lifetime, when they're not second nature to you, I think can be a real asset. So yeah, I'm confused who burned you, and why
Who
are you?
hurt you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll answer that. Um, so I guess so first of all, um, that's an interesting dig on the FaceTime thing. Um,
You were struggling for so long. We're just trying to show
what
Corinne like the stockings.
Well, what Gen Z calls so long is Generation X's moment in time.
It was a full 30 to 45 seconds.
It was
It was
hardly
so
45
long.
seconds.
It was hardly okay. So it was 40 seconds.
I doubt that it hit 30.
It was so long, and it's a button, and it has like a little arrow on it, and you just press that, turns right around. It's
You're so
crazy.
brilliant. You're hired. So, all right. So here's the what my view is that Gen Z has an expectation of work that is not returned in ROI, and is not not returned in the form of return on investment, but just the what they give to their job, and produce. It's not just about giving time and effort, but also producing in terms of quality and value, is not always matched to what they expect to be given to them. And I'm not just talking about finance, but it can include that as well. And then the other thing is, I believe that a culture of a company is something that a lot of companies try to create their culture, but you can't recreate your culture. You can only watch it emerge and influence it one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to influence it is by the people that you hire. And one of the things that I see about Generation Z, and we've already talked about generalizing. I'm just, we've got Generation Z, sometimes called Zoomers, are
Under the age of 28 now, right?
yeah, I don't know what the cutoff is, but that's fair. Like under
Yeah.
the age of 28 works for me. And then millennials are 28 to 36 or something like that. And then or maybe it's 28 to
42.
early 40s or
Yeah.
something like that. And then Generation X is the predominant group after that. And then of course there are the folks that are on their way to retirement in the boomer generation. So there is a substantial expectation that work exists for them, right? That companies exist for them. And there is and that is lopsided, but there's an equally lopsided expectation from generation, or from, let's say, the boomer generation, that that essentially that it's the other way around, that they exist for work, right? And I feel like in the middle there's this, maybe to a gradient, because you have a little bit more, every generation sort of flees from some of the distasteful standards of their parents, right? The things that they didn't like or that bothered them or whatever. You have a little bit more balance in X and millennial, right? In different ways. And so you're reacting to that. So tell me what you're thinking.
Where was your balance?
What do you mean? Me personally?
Yeah, you personally. Like, I didn't see a lot of balance in how you managed your work and your personal life.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that there is more
I'm
balance
not talking about work-life
inherently.
balance. I'm talking about the whole idea of, there's the controlling party is what I'm talking about. The boomer generation, the boss could be a jerk because he can go hire somebody else if you
Mm-hmm.
don't like being mistreated, right? So people were, if you look at the way that it was depicted in TV, which is of course fictionalized versions of reality, the
Oh,
boss is the mean boss, right?
yeah. So
And
you're
and
saying
whereas,
that the older generation believes that, bosses at the top of the food chain, they're replaceable. Middle,
the old other way around, the older generation is the boss is at the yeah. I
yeah,
think I misunderstood what you said. Yeah,
yeah,
the boss is at the top of the food chain. The employee is replaceable.
yeah. And then in the middle, you're saying that there's kind
There's
of a general
a middle ground of
understanding
that
that,
to some degree,
yeah,
right? With a favor one way or the other, depending on which generation we're thinking
yeah.
of, and then on the younger side, they're looking at it the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're ignoring the nuances for the sake of this conversation. Um, the It feels like in the Generation X and Millennial, especially as they've come of age, that there's a little bit of a different nature of what work ethic looks like, and the relationship, the boss employee relationship, seems to be a little bit more, and that's what I mean by balanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, how do you react to that?
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with how you're characterizing it because it's lacking a lot of historical perspective. So, for the boomer generation, when they were coming into the workforce, they were coming into, like, if I'm thinking about my grandfather, he was at a unionized job, he had a pension, Social Security, all of this, these benefits that came
Hmm.
along with it. And the wages were enough to maybe not thrive as a family, but like own a house and have kids and whatever. And over time and over these generational changes, the companies have made more and more and more in profits, and wages have stagnated.
Hmm.
So at some point there was going to be this switch, just like happened, historically when we began with all of the unionization, like around FDR times.
Yeah.
There's going to be this switch where we realize, or the younger generations realize, oh, they're making so much money, and there's this giant gap
Yeah.
between what it takes to live and like this company's profit margin.
Yeah.
So if there's a lot of collective action, you can bring it together and fight for wages that are appropriate
Yeah.
and livable. And yeah, so I don't like the characterization that there's this idea that the company, I don't know how you described it, but like the companies are for the employees,
Yeah.
because I think that that's just ignoring the social context that we're in, where companies have been taking advantage of people for a long time, and there needs to be a real reckoning
Yeah.
with how they treat people.
Okay. So now, to be clear, I wasn't ignoring those historical contexts. We're distilling it down, right, so that we can talk about these concepts in the so that we can exercise our thoughts around it. But I think that you're right that corporate profits have continued to grow. CEO salaries, as you said earlier today in another
Mm-hmm.
conversation, have gone up. The wages have not increased for the employee in the same way,
Mm-hmm.
commensurate with inflation. Um, but you also have the whole idea of um, so in my experience, so to talk about a little bit more about why I'm so bruised. Um, you have the people that have come into the workforce and they have expected um, raises before they've performed, right? They have expected um, uh, you know, uh, time off beyond, essentially they're getting flexibility in their schedule, and they want more time off, and they want more benefits, and yet they're not delivering enough to meet the value of their salary.
Mhm.
And at times I've been able to feel this, and I can only feel the level of value. But there
Mhm.
are other times where I'm able to uh, accurately measure the cost of that employee,
Mhm.
and with objective math say this person is actually a deficit to me. I'm investing in them, and yet they're asking for more, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of been the trend of my experience with younger people, partly because they're inexperienced, and then in addition to being inexperienced, because you expect something of inexperience. You expect an
Mhm.
inexperienced person to bring, you know, that with them, but you also hope that that means that they're there to learn as well,
Mhm.
right? And but then at times, what you see play out with that is they're also part of this generation that has the expectations and the grievances that you described
Mhm.
before they've evaluated and understood where that particular company they're working at is coming from,
Mhm.
right? And so it becomes hard to justify hiring them when they're a deficit financially, and then culturally they become a deficit as well.
I understand what you're saying, and this is why I think more people need to take economics, finance, and tax courses. Um, I don't know if that's just the people that you've hired or if it's a broader trend. It's not something that I've personally seen
Yeah. Well,
in
it's hundreds of people for me personally, but then it's also becomes thousands when it comes to what I've learned from my colleagues.
yeah.
They're also business owners.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that about
Yeah, thank you.
your colleagues. That sounds really tough.
Hmm.
Um,
It's not that tough actually, because what happens is, so I talked about culture a little bit too,
mhm.
and so um, and I mentioned wanting every Zoomer to be outnumbered two
Two
to
to one.
one by someone in the older millennial
Mhm.
phase. And what happens there is your culture becomes, again, who you hire.
Mhm.
And if we create the gravity with these people with experience and the values that align with the uh, concerns, needs, and values of the business, then it creates an environment where we're in a better position to train up the
Mhm.
Zoomers, because they have that counterbalance
Yeah.
to hopefully create the scenario that allows them to grow. And
Mhm.
again, I'm talking about my perspective.
Okay.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Now, coming as a Zoomer, how do you think about that?
I mean, how do I think about that? I don't know. I
Does it seem like, is my approach reasonable or unreasonable? I welcome you to be fully honest with that.
no, I understand your approach. I still think that it's unreasonable, but it's possible that I am just speaking from like my own context. Like
Yeah. Well, we
I
both are.
well, yeah. But I am surrounded by a lot of people who are high achieving, hardworking, real assets to whatever organization that they work for. So it's possible that I just have a skewed
That
perspective
you're seeing the
on
cream of the crop.
exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe I have a skewed perspective on the generation. Um, my initial thought was, well, you should just hire better people because there are certainly many Gen Z out there that are, you know, business savvy
Hmm.
and would thrive at a variety of companies so long as they are enabled to thrive by their employer. So there's that. And
Well, so essentially, you're saying hire better people. I think that's the right move. But then what that ends up being is that ends up being people that meet a certain set of qualities that are defined as whatever better is, which we'll
Mhm.
skip over defining that for now. Um, and they end up being people that have had more experience. Even setting aside the experience itself aside, the qualities that you look for in an employee, you see it that what rises to the top is people that are older, people that have been in the game longer.
Well, yeah, obviously, if you're looking for someone who's going to immediately come in and be an amazing asset to the business, you're looking for someone who has more experience. But if you're looking to hire someone who is younger, then looking for those intangible skills in a like an interview setting is and hiring better people generally. um, I don't like saying that because it feels like an impossible task.
Yeah, it is.
But
That's the problem. It is.
yeah, but yeah, not every Gen Zer is like that, or Zoomer, or
Yeah,
whatever
of
you're
course not.
calling them.
Yeah, there's always exceptions, and that's that's the problem that I see, is that it seems to be exceptions instead of being a more reliable trend, um, of having that, you know, more valuable. And this is hard to talk about because we aren't even clearly defining the grievance that I'm even referring
Yeah,
to.
I mean, I'm certain that the people who were older than you thought the same thing about millennials and Gen Xers when they came into the workforce. I
Yeah.
think it's a general distaste for the environment that comes after, and
Yeah.
a desire for consistency, when really what you need to do is adapt.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It feels reductive and maybe like poor management,
Hmm.
to be having all of these struggles with the the majority of people that you hire in this generation. Like maybe you're just not connecting with them, or maybe your investment in their growth isn't what they need. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no reason to dispute that. Um, the but what I see in the marketplace is other people that are saying the exact same thing that I'm saying.
And they're
And
probably around your same age, right?
no, no, all over the map.
Yeah.
Businesses of all sizes, uh, owners and managers of all ages, and including, I even talked to one consultant who specifically consults on how to. She's an HR consultant who talks about how to hire and best support and utilize the uh, young generation.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a theme that I think that you'll um, come across. I think at some point, unless you are lucky enough to manage to just escape this topic entirely.
I mean, I hope to be lucky enough to escape this topic entirely.
Yeah, good luck
I
to you.
work in the legal field. Maybe
Yeah, there's
maybe I'll
employees there
escape.
too. Um,
uh, it's tax. We're small groups. Maybe we get one a year.
yeah. So, and that, but then that ties into my whole idea of building the culture. When I was hired as a young 18-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
first real job, um, I was in the minority.
Mm-hmm.
I was the one of, if not the youngest person in the company. And what that did for me is I looked at the people around me and I tried to match them, right? I tried
Mm-hmm.
to follow what I saw in my colleagues and bosses, but especially my bosses. And so that's where I think that the key is you have to create, in my strategy that I've proposed, you have to create a gravity where the inexperienced and young are outnumbered enough that it builds them up, and it's better for them. I think it's better for them, and I think it's better for the company. So time will tell. Okay, so let's talk about something else. So we've talked about a lot of things related to work and politics and all that. What about just social life? What's dating life like for the Zoomer generation?
Oh, it's tough. It's a tough time out there. Um I I don't know. People are afraid to approach other people in, I don't know, the same way. Like, didn't you approach mom at, I don't know, some sort of like fall function and throw hay at her or something? Um
Yeah,
it's
it was a social
yeah,
setting. Yeah.
it's just a little different.
Why is it? Explain that.
I don't know why. I think that eh, maybe people have become a little bit more afraid of rejection.
Hmm.
People have become less accustomed to, um, I don't know, having those sorts of conversations. I can't tell you why, really.
Hmm.
I assume rejection is a big part of it, though. So people have been drawn more onto dating apps, and those are a problem themselves because it's kind of gamifying the social
Hmm.
connection.
Hmm.
So you have to choose whether or not you want to connect with someone based on a couple photos and like a couple prompts.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
like they're like, uh, I'm an expert at, I don't know, getting my sweatshirt back. That's like
Right.
on every single dating profile. Um, it's it's distilling people down into like 6 photos, and you're supposed to make some sort of connection based off of that. And
Do you think
I
that?
think it's shallow.
Yeah. I agree with that. Couldn't agree more. Do you think that there is a problem with the whole idea of dating apps, or is it necessary? Or I guess both can be true, but tell me what you think there.
I certainly think that there are problems with it. I don't really like the um, injection of capitalism into this kind of social connection.
Yeah.
Like, you have to pay to meet new people,
Yeah.
or I think there was a recent like article about Hinge hiding the more attractive, like people who get more likes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
more attractive people behind like a paywall. So you have to pay to see all of the people in your area, and that feels icky to me. Um,
Well, and what I've heard to be the case, and so there's this whole idea of incels, right? So the incel,
mhm.
at least in the way that we think of it today, didn't exist in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up.
They were just called virgins then.
And exactly. So, but the way that the dating app works prior to this um, change that you're suggesting may have happened with Hinge. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not
Mhm.
disputing that or anything. Um, is that somebody will see, options and
Mhm.
then react to those options,
Mhm.
right? So naturally, the most good-looking people, especially those that have a good photographer
Mhm.
themselves or someone else, are in good lighting and all that kind of stuff. Like all these real and imagined features
Mhm.
rise to the top and they get the most reaction. And what I've heard, and I don't know this to be true or not, is that 90 plus percent of the reaction goes to a small percentage, like a single digit number of people.
Yeah.
And then if that is the primary way that people are relying on dating, very wonderful, even attractive, dateable people are going unreached.
Mhm.
Whereas before the internet was the driving tool, the driving factor for dating, what people were doing is they were interacting in person without the expectation of it being a date,
Mhm.
without any kind of burden of performance the on the interaction, and then you would get a sense of who someone is, and you feel safe, attracted, chemistry before anything, even a sense of whether or not they liked you, whether you liked them. So that sense of rejection, that fear was there then too, but it was not as you had these cues that would help you to uncover whether or not there was an opportunity to have a relationship with this person. And it seems like Generation Z has abandoned that altogether.
I don't know if they've abandoned it altogether.
Do you think there's a resurgence of it, or are more people getting turned off on dating apps?
Yeah, I think people are tired of the dating apps. Like I've been on them before, and I personally got exhausted by them. It was
I've heard that from everyone I've ever talked to.
Yeah, it was frustrating. There's always like so many like likes to respond to and decide based on a couple photos, like, oh, do I want to match with this person or do I not want to match with this person? And it's frustrating, and there's often times where like you're looking at a profile and you're like, man, I wish I knew like a little bit more. Like, I'm going to reject you because I don't know, this photo is a little bit weird.
Yeah.
So, but I can only, deal with so many interactions at a time. So it becomes really tiring.
Yeah. And people aren't distilled down to their jobs in the real life setting.
Yeah.
Although it can happen, but it's just not the default to have bullet points that say this is who this person is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've never been on a dating app. Does it tend to disclose anything you want to, like, for example, political leanings and things like that?
I never match with a person unless I see their political leanings.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yes, it does disclose political leanings, and if you don't,
if you choose to, right?
If you choose to.
So if
And
somebody
it's-
doesn't have their political leanings, you move on.
I say no.
Interesting.
I'm not going to date a Republican in a trench coat. Like, if it says moderate, that's also a no-go for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is crazy. Tell me more about that.
So the thing is, I'm very driven. I'm very independent. I'm very successful. And the thing that I have noticed in recent years with dating is that whenever I am on some sort of dating app and it is not someone who says liberal or something like that, then the first message that I'll get is something along the lines of, oh, we could make D1 babies, which is absolutely wild to start off a conversation with, like, let's have a kid together and it'll be tall because you're also tall. Others have said things along the lines of, oh, let me like retire you. You'll be the best stay-at-home wife. I'm not going to be a stay-at-home wife. And this is coming from people who either do not have their political leanings on their profile or who say that they're moderate. But then they start off, and those are just kind of like,
so an independent is out too?
Independent is out too, yeah. Okay. Because the most, like, I'm giving you like the more moderate responses that I get, but a lot of them will end up saying something very sexist, kind of disgusting, or generally devaluing the work that I do.
Yeah.
And that's not something I'm interested in. So I avoid it completely. So if you don't say liberal, I will not match with you, because I assume, based on my experience, that you will not respect me or my career.
Interesting. So does that rule apply in every part of life or only on the apps?
Only on the apps, really.
So the apps are shallow.
Yeah.
And you have to have more strict rules.
Exactly.
Got
it. So I'm friends with people who are of different political leanings. I have met them. I'm in classes with them, whatever. And it is really hard to be disrespectful to someone's face. It is not hard to be disrespectful to them when you're seeing them through a screen. So I think that from the people that I've met in person, and I like to think that if they're on the apps, that they're also being respectful and nice there too.
Hmm.
Um, but from the people that I meet in person, it even if we have different political leanings, like I generally know whether or not they respect me as a person and as a human and as an intellectual.
Hmm. So I'm looking at a statistic. So according to a study by the medicine company Hims, um, 77% of Gen Z, um, let's see, a 2025 study of U.S. adults aged 18 to 65 found that 77% of Gen Z in relationships met their partner in real life, not through apps or social media, which is maybe different than what you might assume if you just kind of observe what you hear in the media. Yet 44% of Gen Z men report zero romantic experience during their teen years, double the rate for prior generations.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that we have seen is that because we're father daughter, it'll be great to separate this from individuals.
Mm-hmm.
You see a decrease in sex in the Zoomer generation, and maybe young millennials would be included in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why is it that, to the best that you can pontificate on this, why is it that 20, 30 years ago people were having more sex, now they're having less?
I don't know. Yeah.
Have you heard that statistic?
No, I haven't heard that statistic. I I really don't know. I mean, to some extent, it's probably. I was gonna say good because there's also like a lot of STDs out there, and
Yeah.
kids need to be kids and that sort of thing. But yeah, I haven't heard that statistic. I don't really know why, and I don't know if I can really explain it.
Yeah, and I don't certainly don't think that I can either. But what I can point to is that people are spending so much more of their social time online
Mm-hmm.
than they did when I was at your
Oh,
age.
I guess that, yeah. No, that would make sense as a reason. People are more distracted by video games, social media, TikTok, whatever it may be, and not spending as much time, I don't know, going and doing things with friends. Like,
Yeah.
I think maybe that's where me being, I guess, on the older side of Gen Z, or maybe it's because you guys didn't let me have like a phone. I don't know. Um, but I think that's where my experience kind of differs because I did spend a lot of my time not chronically on social media,
Hmm.
and I had a lot of friends, and I went out and I did things with them.
Hmm.
But I guess the younger parts of this generation might struggle with that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they always have to do something that is performing for social media too, because I think that there's this real experience for younger people where whenever they go out, they want to do something that is aesthetic, that they can post on their social media for the
Yeah.
social clout, but it's not necessarily translating into a actual social connection with their
Right.
peers.
Yeah. Um, and um, and and it was enormously different when, again, we're just put me in your age,
Mm-hmm.
half of my life ago. Um, it was the only way that you could really interact with a friend was you could call them on the phone. It's not that the internet didn't exist; it just wasn't a very good way of
Mm-hmm.
connecting with people. The internet obviously existed then. Me as a young adult, um, you had to call them on the phone, or you had to go see them in person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, so the lift to hang out with someone was higher, and people valued it enough put that time in because
Mm-hmm.
that was their only choice.
Yeah.
Right. So it's harder to, I mean, today, young people, and I've had this many, many times with young people in the work setting, don't want to use the phone at all. They don't want to call people.
Oh,
And
that's crazy. I'm calling my friends like all the time.
yeah,
Like I'm on the phone.
it is easier to find someone that doesn't want to call someone than it is to find someone that does. And
That's wild to me. It's so much more efficient
oh
to
yeah, of
just
course.
get on the phone.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree 100%, but I also think that it's so much more efficient to start by the simple things being a text or
Mm-hmm.
an email.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
you can eliminate meetings by just sending an email, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. What do you think that I and other extremely old people like me are missing about Gen Z that we need to see as like something, an opportunity to tap into, especially if you're thinking about like business owners? What should we be seeing as like the gold mine that we're overlooking?
I don't know if I can give you a gold mine that you're overlooking.
Why should we hire a 22-year-old when we can hire a 32-year-old?
Well, first of all, they're going to be slightly cheaper, so there's that. And I think that just like most people, like if you invest your time into them, they will want to do something more for you. So if you find someone who is passionate about the work that you do, and then you spend time with them, you can get really good work product out of someone who is bright and interested. So yeah, I think that everyone wants the solution to be simple.
Hmm.
Like you want to hire someone and them to immediately be, the perfect employee that is productive and making you lots of money or whatever it may
Hmm.
be. But the solution is rarely that simple. So you have to hire the person who is young and spend time with them and connect with them as a person, not just like a figure on a
Not just
spreadsheet,
an
not
asset.
just an
Yeah.
asset, like as a person. And when people feel valued, and appreciated and encouraged, they're going to do good work for you. That doesn't always have to be monetary either. I mean, obviously, you should be paying people a livable wage, but like beyond that, beyond the wage, you should be investing your time into them and showing that you care about them and their development. And at that point, if you're spending all of this time developing them, then if they're resisting taking on responsibility that you know that they are ready for, then they're probably not a good fit. But you have to kind of put in that effort first,
Yeah.
and see if they can be what you need them to be.
All right, so we're going to get into the lightning round, and
Okay.
this is where we talk about whatever I want to talk about, and I want to get your reaction to it. So, what do you think about UFOs?
No opinion.
So, do you think that uh, is your opinion so at sub-zero that you have no point of view on whether UFOs are a real or false phenomenon?
I think yeah. Yeah.
You literally don't care.
I think I literally don't care.
Okay, so then that's how everybody else in your generation feels about taxes. Just so you know.
No, I know, but I'm trying to change that.
Okay, so they're trying to change your idea on UFOs.
Okay, then I'll start caring about UFOs. I don't care.
You don't. I don't care if you do. I'm just
Yeah.
talking about other people.
If it's a choice, like if I have to care about UFOs for people to care about taxes, I will start to care about UFOs.
Okay.
Like, give me a documentary. Let me watch it.
So if you were to make a wild guess, would you say, yeah, I think that there's alien life, intelligent life on other planets somewhere out there?
I have no opinion.
Okay, that's fine.
Sure, probably.
Okay, probably is
Yeah.
fine. But probably, but leaning in the no opinion range. Okay. What's your reaction to the topic of generalized topic of conspiracy theories, especially when we're talking about like politics and government?
Yeah, I think that they're dangerous because people will start to um I think a lot of conspiracy theories are very they're rooted in this simplistic understanding of complex phenomenon.
Okay, and a lot of times with conspiracy theories, I feel like whether they're based on reality or not, they are almost overcomplicating something is quite simple. Would you agree or disagree?
I think that they are either they're taking something that is simple and making it really, really convoluted in a way that appeals to people's desire for mm, meaning.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if meaning is the word that I'm really looking for, but yeah.
So okay, that makes sense. And do you feel like there's a place for conspiracy theories though? Some would say that we need, despite the misguidedness that crops up in this area of life, we need conspiracies. We need people to challenge the status quo or challenge the um,
Hmm.
uh, orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a place for it, but mostly it's a problem.
I think that there's a place for disagreement and testing the hypotheses and retesting them.
Hmm.
I with it being called a conspiracy theory,
There's a baggage
there's
associated with that.
baggage.
Hmm.
So I want the scientific method to work itself out. I want people to constantly be thinking about what they're doing and challenging the ideas that they have about life, work, whatever it may be.
Okay.
But conspiracy theories, which I think about as like I don't know, the earth is flat or we didn't actually land on the moon.
Or yeah, JFK
Yeah.
was not killed by one man.
Yeah, things like that. Those I don't think that they have
Merit.
real value.
Okay. So, what do you think about the idea? As you know, most of my many siblings were born at home. What do you think about home births?
It's gonna be a hard pass for me.
Hard pass for you,
Um,
but do you think that there's a place for it for other people?
yes.
Okay, that's okay. That's
Yeah.
good enough.
I mean, I personally I understand the desire to like birth at home because it's a very intense process and being in an area that is comfortable is really important. And
Hmm.
there's been and this is like a chronic problem, women's health concerns are not taken seriously. So I've experienced this in my own healthcare and it's hard to trust a medical institution with
So,
something
so it
that
makes sense
substantial.
that somebody might be inspired to do
It
something
makes
to take
sense.
control or whatever.
However, I personally, even with like experiences with doctors, I personally really believe in, the
Use the tools that we have.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
got
want
it.
to use the tools that I have available to me. I personally like if I were to ever birth a child, I don't want to die in childbirth. So I want to be
You want to decrease those chances,
I want to
increase your chance of
decrease
success.
yeah,
Yeah.
decrease my chances of dying
Okay.
and therefore I want to be close to a doctor, an OR and blood
Got it.
transfusions.
All right. How do you think social media is impacting our society? Mostly good or mostly bad?
Mostly bad.
Okay. Is it to the point where you believe the government should intervene with laws to limit access to social media?
I think I would have to hear more about specific laws.
Sure. But without determining the point is that I assume that we can assume that law could go in many different. There could be many different approaches which you could agree or disagree with. We're not talking about the approaches so much as, is there a law that could limit access to social media, or should we let freedom be freedom?
I think I would say go with a law to limit
Okay.
social media, but I don't trust the current administration to make a law to limit social media in that way. That would actually increase freedom. Also, I think people's conceptions of freedom are
different. Everybody's is different.
They're skewed, and also it's an impossible concept because.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you get your news?
I read the New York Times, Politico.
On your phone, on your desktop, on
phone, desktop, yeah.
both. Okay.
I also read tax notes every day, so I generally spend about 20 minutes on that every day.
So major publications.
I mean, and then tax notes, but yeah.
That's not a major publication in its category?
It's a major publication for tax attorneys.
Exactly. That's what I said. Major publications. Go ahead.
Yeah. So generally major publications, when something is immediately unfolding, I'll get on social media and I'll see what people are saying about it. So like recently there was a shooting at Brown, and I got on Reddit, like the Providence, Rhode Island Reddit, and I was like, what's going on here? Because a couple people were texting me and they're like, hey, I know you're at NYU, but like, you good?
Yeah, your mom was one of those people.
No, I know. So I got on like the Reddit there. I take that all with a grain of salt, so I don't really consider it news, but it's technically like a current event.
It's an input. It's an input. Okay. Well, you've given me a lot to think about.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll have a change of heart. And
have you had a change of heart yet? Did I convince you of anything?
I think I'm going to need to sleep on it. I'm going to need to sleep on it.
So that's a no.
I'm going to need to sleep on it.
Yeah. Your face is saying no.
We'll sleep on it. All right. Well, thanks for coming on Truth Ache. It's been great to have you. And you've really contributed a lot. So thanks for your input today.
Maybe next time I'll see Michael and Aaron too.
I hope so.
Okay.
All right. Everybody have a great week.